sleep. Hello, Jacksonville.
Hello.
So you are going to see a lot of twirling on stage today because I am in Los Angeles right now. I moved to LA from New York City, but I'm originally a Southern girl. How many of you are Southern women out there?
All right.
Southern girls, right? We invented the twirl. So you're going to see a lot of twirling, but I always like to start with something fun to help you warm up, because how many people think that attorneys are stuffy? Let's be honest. Do you all think that we're boring? But who is the first person you call when you're in trouble? Other than the Lord, right? Or your mom, an attorney. So I am here today because I have a lot of knowledge to share with you about a serious topic. How many of you think that natural hair in the workplace is a serious topic? It's a serious topic. And I would like to say the reason why I said hello, Jacksonville, I'd like to shout out to you because do you all know that Florida, the state of, is a very ripe state for this topic. Did you all know that there was a national case out of Florida with a little student, had a beautiful afro, she couldn't go to school because of the afro, and Florida has become the center of attention in terms of natural hair issues related to law. Also, Florida is a huge hotbed for this topic because locks are the centerpiece of the issue. Do we have any women or men in the audience with locks? Can I see a show of hands? How many of you know that there was recently a case in the courts where an employer can actually ban locks in the workplace? Did you all know about that? Now here's the deal. Because I am an attorney, we are taught to be fair and objective. So today I'm not going to tell you anything to scare you. I'm not going to say anything negative against employers because I'm an employer. And when I say that employers have rights, they do, right? If you know the importance of respecting authority, then you know that if you are in a position of authority, you have rights to mandate rules. What we're going to discuss today is how do you balance cultural identity and an employer's rights. So if you have locks, this is very relevant to you because this case is related to locks. Now, the reason why locks are a huge issue in Florida because is everybody wearing locks because it's a wonderful, beautiful cultural hairstyle? What are some other reasons why people wear locks? Religion? What religion? Rastafarian, right? So in Florida, you also have a lot of people who are wearing locks for religious reasons, so we will discuss that as well. So just wanted to warm up with that. Before I start with the talk, and then we have some beautiful models here that's going to help us in terms of the natural hair fashion show. Can we have a show of hands for our models, please? So before the models come up and we start with the fashion show portion, I would like to say a few moments of silence if you have been affected by Hurricane Irma, or you know someone who has been affected. Okay, so just a moment of silence, meditation, prayer, whatever you do to tap into inner power or outer power. But I think it is important to acknowledge that Florida has been affected by the hurricane. So now that we have some background information out of the way, why don't we get started with the natural hair talk? How many of you actually have this pamphlet in front of you? Most of you should have received the Bronner Brother bag with the pamphlet. And can we have a quick show of hands for it? First of all, the Black South Expo, Florida Black Expo, show of hands, wonderful event, right? And also would like to let you know that Bronner Brothers, one of the many sponsors of my book, Natural Hair in the Workplace, What Are Your Rights, has gifted some gift bags, and in that gift bags, there's a Know Your Rights guide. How many of you have that? So this is going to be completely interactive. Most of us are Southern, right? That's why I started off with the Southern pitch. If you feel you want to speak, the lovely Natural Hair Fashion Show director, Miss LaTanya Sally, could you kind of come around? I want this to be an interactive session. If there's something, would you guys laugh if I trip over the mic? Okay, so we're gonna be careful with that. But if there's something that you'd like to say, Miss LaTanya Sally, if you could please come forward. I will kind of do this motion, and she will then, as much as possible, extend the mic to you, but you're gonna have to come up front, okay? Is that our agreement? Because I want you all to voice your opinions as well. So what we're going to do is briefly discuss the natural hair in the workplace issues. So again, I mentioned that I'm attorney Tracy Sanders. You can meet me at booth number 182. You can also go over to Bronner Brothers at booth number 34 for additional samples. And we also have a giveaway today, so if you want to enter the giveaway, please pass your card over to my assistant, Shola, and we have a curls giveaway at the end. But let's get started with understanding workplace discrimination. When you hear the term discrimination, what does that term mean? Anyone? What is discrimination? So, unfair treatment, and you are staring at me with big, beautiful eyes. Would you like to give us a definition or a term in terms of what is discrimination? Latanya or Shola? Anyone else who wants to participate? Perfect.
Just in general bias based off of your beliefs and what you think everyone else believes should be.
Okay, your bias. Anyone else? Discrimination? Has anyone experienced discrimination at work or in the schools? Any personal stories? We have another person? No? Yes? Okay, discrimination is when you treat people who should be treated the same differently. So how many of you agree if you're in a workplace, it should be based on your merit, whether you can do the job, whether you come to work on time, whether you're qualified. But if certain people are receiving benefits because of race, because of sex, because of gender, or any other factor other than merit, then that is possibly discrimination. Now we want to be very careful. How many of you know you cannot claim discrimination if you're supposed to be at work and you're out? Sometimes I'm an attorney, but we're all one community, so I keep it real. But if you're supposed to be at work at 10 and you're hanging out with Pookie, or Junebug, or your cousins, or your mom, and then you claim discrimination, is that a relevant issue? Do you think that you're gonna win if you go to court? No. Now, what if the employer has a dress and grooming code that says no braids and no locks, and then you go to work the next week and get braids or locks? Do you think that's discrimination? No. Could someone please volunteer to come up if you want to tell us? What do you all think about that? What if the employer has specifically stated no braids, no locks, no afro, and you decide after going to a meetup that you want to do that hairstyle? What do you all think about that? Does anyone think it's fair? Should an employer mandate how you look at work? You're too shy? So I'll tell you, yes, an employer can mandate how you look at work, but they can do it only if they're not violating Title VII of the Civil Rights Act of 1964. How many of you know about the civil rights movement? Dr. Martin Luther King? Is that an important topic, important issue? Well, you know that the South was the place where we basically changed this entire world. Did you all know that? So if you're a Southerner, you should feel proud because you have so many people coming into the United States now, especially Florida. Anyone here from the Caribbean? Anyone know people from Europe? Anyone know people from all these countries? We don't always get along, let's be honest. Within the Black community, we have schisms. I'm American, I'm African, I'm Caribbean. But do you all know that the civil rights movement has made this a better country for all of us? And that movement was fought by Black Americans in the South. So because of the civil rights movement, your employer should not discriminate against you based on race, sex, national origin, or gender, okay? Now, it's only if the employer has a policy against braids or dreadlocks or some other hairstyle and you violate that rule, might you be fired. In terms of the locks, and before we go through the 5 tips to help you navigate, would anyone like to speak to the issue? Some people feel if you use the term dreadlocks that that's a derogatory term. Does anyone have an opinion about whether we should use the word dreadlocks or locks, or does it make a difference? Would you be willing to state your opinion about that? Why do some people get offended when they hear the term dreadlocks?
I wasn't aware that people were offended at the term dreadlocks. They're locks.
Okay.
So, I don't think there's anything offensive about it. It's a protective hairstyle for our hair, so I didn't know that.
Well, actually, in some spaces, people don't like the term dreadlocks because supposedly the term dread came about during the transatlantic slave trade. Do you all know about the slave trade? You know that if you are of African descent, most of your ancestors came to the United States from Africa. During the transatlantic slave trade, purportedly, the slaves, how many of you know that when we don't comb our hair, it kind of mats, right? Our hair will actually lock naturally. Did you all know that? So when their hair purportedly locked naturally, it was said that some of the white slave masters or owners or people that were holding us captive in the ship went down, saw that our hair began to mat, and basically combined together and said, wow, that looks dreadful, it locked. So purportedly that's where the term dreadlocks came from. Before I go through the 5 tips, within the human race, you have 3 major hair textures. You have straight hair. How many of you would say that you're born with straight hair? Your hair is naturally straight. How many of you were born with curly hair? Your hair is naturally curly. How many of you were born with kinky, or as some people call it, tightly coiled hair? Your hair is coiled. Now, of those 3 hair textures, I want you all to just shout this out. Which hairstyle is probably the most preferred in America? Straight, curly, or kinky? Which hairstyle is probably the subject to most discrimination claims? And do you all think that's based on what? Why is it that straight hair is preferred and kinky hair is pretty much denigrated? It's not as desirable.
They don't understand it. At my church, I'm one of the few black people at my church, and it's a big church. And the simple fact that they just don't understand how, I mean, it's hair, they just don't understand the science behind why our hair is the way it is.
Okay, so some of it could be curiosity. Anyone on this side, do you have an opinion in terms of why there might be a stigma in terms of straight hair, curly hair, or kinky hair? A lot of it could be curiosity. A lot of it is because it's different. Our hair is really different than any other texture in terms of humans. But see the difference as a good difference. You have a lot of versatility, you can do a lot with it, and it's always the subject of media. Do you all agree that black culture in America pretty much is the trendsetter? Right? We do things first, we rock it, other people do it, and then they discriminate against us sometimes for it. So don't buy into the hype. We have always set trends in this country and beyond. So now let's kind of, before we go into the natural hair fashion show, because I'd love to introduce you to the models, let's go over the 5 tips. Can you all go in your booklet now? So if you have natural hair, how many naturalistas do we have? A lot of you are natural, I can see. Anyone would like to share a personal story about natural hair at work? Is this an issue for you? It's only an issue if your employer has a policy. So if your employer doesn't have a policy, don't go to work on Monday and say, I met this attorney, Tracy Sanders, and she said I have rights. Okay? It's only an issue if your employer makes it an issue. So if your employer is not saying anything, just continue to rock it. Okay? Now, if it is an issue, here's what you need to do. Okay? And if it's not an issue for you, if you want to share it with your church members, your family, people in the community, how many of us agree that knowledge is power? So I really appreciate Mr. and Mrs. Thomas for allowing me to speak so we can educate the public on this. And how many of you know that this is more about humanity than black people, okay? So you can share this information with anyone of any race, color, creed, hair texture. We're not into discrimination. Now, let's go through the tips. So here are 5 tips to help you navigate natural hair in the workplace. First, you have to follow the dress and grooming code. Where do you find your dress and grooming code at work? Now, how many of you may have had an interview, and I've done this before, you go in that interview with the straight hairstyle, you get hired, and then you call your girlfriend, you're like, girl, did you see that new crochet, right? And it's like, I'm gonna give it 2 or 3 weeks and then I'm gonna change my hairstyle. How many of you have ever done that? Interviewed with the straight and then you change it? We do it, but I want to caution you, the moment you are hired, you should review the dress and grooming code. Where do you find that dress and grooming code at work? Where's that found?
In the employee handbook.
Yes, absolutely. So when you are hired or if you're currently employed, check the employee handbook for the dress and grooming code. It will tell you everything you need to know. Now, the dress code is how you dress. Okay? If you work in a space where you need a uniform, wear that uniform, keep it clean. If you work in a creative space, maybe you can wear what you want. If you are working in a professional space, it might be a little more restrictive. Maybe you want to dress casual, business casual, or professional. So the dress is how you dress. The grooming is how you smell at work. Do you all know there are cases about how people smell? Can you all believe that? What do you do if someone at work has bad breath? Would you all tell them? Would anyone tell someone, if you work closely, someone on the other side is laughing, We have someone here that's going to respond. We'll bring the mic to you, or you can come up front. But there are actually legal cases about breath, and breath is related to grooming. So come on up, ma'am, if you'd like. It's more than just hair. What should you do if someone has bad breath at work?
I would typically offer that person, perchance, breath mints, etc. Just something that kind of lets you know, maybe, or be like, oh girl, did you have some onions with lunch? Get one of these mints. And let it go with that. If it continues, then I may have to pull that person aside and have some conversation.
Now, does it matter if you're a supervisor or a peer?
For me, it does, because most of the time I am the supervisor, so I try to approach it from a friendly standpoint before it becomes something where I need to make notes about it.
What if it's a peer? No, we want you to stay. What if it's a peer? If you're not the supervisor, but you're working together, would you let that person know?
I would.
Okay, now stay right here. I want to tell you there's a difference. Under the law, if you're a supervisor, you want to be very careful because that person could claim discrimination or harassment. And if there is a discrimination or harassment suit, unfortunately, the supervisor is going to be named in the suit because the employer is vicariously liable for you. So just to let everyone in the audience know, if you're supervising folks, be very careful, okay? Before you mention breath, before you mention hair, before you mention anything, your name is?
Sarita.
Sarita. As Sarita has mentioned, when you're supervisor, you have to let people know. Why is breath or bad hair or any other grooming issue an issue at work? Why, if you have clients, you don't want to lose clients because they don't want to talk to your people because they're smelly or they're not following the dress and grooming code, or if they feel they don't have a professional image or whatever it might be. So, in terms of, woo, I almost tripped over the mic, huh? In terms of the law, you want to be very careful, but just know, before you speak to anyone at work about grooming issues, first document it. Second, call an employment law attorney. And third, have more than one conversation with that person. So thank you so much. But remember to follow the dress and grooming code. Number two, review the anti-discrimination policy. That's going to be found in the lunchroom on the wall. You all know when you go to the lunchroom on the wall, there's that huge poster that tells you how much is the hourly wage in your state. So that's where you'll find the anti-discrimination policy. You also, number three, want to research state and federal employment laws. So at the federal level, you have Title VII. Remember we discussed Title VII? You all are going to remember that? So that's your federal employment law protection. At the state level, you have laws in Florida, the state of Florida, and every state in the United States is different, but whatever state you live in or where you live and work, you should know the state employment law. You can find that online or in the state library. Fourth, if you have an issue at work with your employer, now this is what you should not do. How many of you think it's probably not a good idea to tell your friend at work that you're planning to sue your employer? Would any of you do that? Not a good idea, right? And how many of you know that you have to be very careful if you have a complaint against your employer and you decide to sue? What do you think is the possible danger of suing your current employer? Anyone? What are some risks when you do that? We have someone in the back. If you could come up, ma'am, or we'll bring it to you, please. Yes. This is very important. I want you to know your rights, but think it through. It's not as simple as you think. If you feel you've been discriminated against, what are some risks in terms of filing that employment lawsuit?
It could backfire on you, and it might be difficult for you to find other employment.
And why, ma'am?
Because they would look at you as a, I guess, troublemaker, so to speak. Like the Watergate situation where the guard ratted in and said you couldn't find employment, something like that.
Exactly. The word that you might hear is blackballing. It's illegal. Thank you very much. An employer should not blackball, but it happens. You know why? The moment you file an employment lawsuit, it becomes a public record. So before you're hired, how many of you know that employers check you out on social media? Facebook, LinkedIn. You are investigated before you get that offer. Another part of that investigation is, have you ever sued an employer in the past? And that might pop up. Now, if you have something that is so egregious, an employer is being sexually harassed, you are being taunted because of race in your hair, you have no choice. You need to speak to an employment lawyer privately, but don't let everyone at work know what's going on with you. Now, if you decide to move forward in terms of a lawsuit, you would have to let your employer know what your concern is, but you never tell your employer, I'm going to sue. You just say whatever the problem is. I feel I'm being treated, whatever you feel is the grievance. Before you can file a suit, the employer must be notified. But whatever you do, have a private conversation with an employment law attorney in your state, but do not discuss the legal matter with your employer. Everything has to be handled between the attorney and the employer at that point. And before you sue, I would say try to exit gracefully. Come up with an exit strategy. This isn't working, what can I do to leave? And ask for a letter of good reference. And then 5, before we start with our natural hair fashion show, want to remind you that if you have any concerns or questions about employment discrimination law or natural hair in the workplace, I've already mentioned you should contact an employment lawyer in your state. You can also go to the American Bar Association website, and then you can find a referral for a local or state lawyer. Now, that's the natural hair talk. Did anyone learn anything? I hope so. You can follow me online at Natural Hair and the Law, and you can also meet me at the booth number 182, okay, if you have additional questions. But it's one thing to discuss the issues, but I want you all to enjoy being here, and I think it's important for me to actually demonstrate what I'm discussing. How many of you know that natural hair can be beautiful in the schools? Can natural hair be beautiful in the schools? I see some students. We need to teach our kids that they are beautiful, regardless of race, color, or hair texture. And so we want our natural hair model to please come up. This is a model of natural hair in the schools. We also have an afro model. How many of you know that you can rock an afro at work and look cute, okay? But you still need to do your job, remember? It's all about good work performance, being on time, making sure you're following the dress and grooming code. But you can have that wonderful natural hair afro at work and it can actually rock. What about braids at work? Do you all think if the employer is not banning braids, because remember they can, okay? What about braids at work? You can rock those braids. You can even rock a braids mohawk depending on where you work. So we're going to discuss that. Every industry is different. You want to do what is best for your industry so you can stand out in a good way. What about locks? The controversial locks. You have all kinds of things. Our lovely lady on this side mentioned whether it's dreadlocks, sister locks, simply beautiful locks. You can have those at work as well. How many of you notice that a lot of men are doing beards now, right? Beards are the rage. And guess what? If you come to my booth, number 182, I have some beard samples for you. They're actually natural hair products specifically for men with braids. So if you come to 182, I have some beard products. And we have our braids model. So we actually have 4 beautiful models to demonstrate natural hair at work. Can we have a hand for our beautiful models? Now, enough of me. My voice is about to go. I've been talking so much. So it's time for me to turn it over and introduce you to our lovely natural hair models. First, I didn't do that. First model is Mahogany. Okay, Mahogany, what grade are you in? 6. So our first model is Mahogany. She's in 6th grade, and she is demonstrating natural hair in the schools. Mahogany, can you kind of twirl and can you all see her hair? Are you all afraid for me to move? Got it, you can go back in place. So I actually have Shola here who is going to catch me if I fall off stage, so we have it all under control. All right, next we have, I'm moving slowly. What about this? Just stay in place. Our Afro model, your name is?
Felicia Wright.
So Felicia is demonstrating an Afro. So our model after Felicia, Dewan Rollinson is all of, and this is probably, could be considered an offensive question, but I have to ask because it's related to law, is all of what you're wearing 100% your hair?
This is all my hair.
All of your hair. Now, if you two could come up, I want to show you something. How many of you in the audience might have an attachment? You don't have to raise your hand, but you know that a lot of us wear extensions. And you can even have natural hair extensions. So our 2 models here with the Afro and with the braided mohawk, this is all natural. Natural hair is protected under the law, but if you have any type of hair that is added, hair that is added is not considered natural hair under the law. It's considered artificial, and if you file a suit based on artificial hair, it's not considered protected because it's only if the hair is growing out of your scalp, okay? So that's why I wanted to demonstrate natural hair versus protective or natural hairstyles. Those are completely different. So thank you both. Are you all with me? Can I ease across the stage? Okay. Walk slowly, exactly. So next I'm coming over to our model, and your name is?
Christopher Williams.
Christopher is demonstrating locks as well as a beard in the workplace. So with the locks, could you kind of turn around and show the audience your locks? Now, locks are very controversial. You've actually had a case where locks were banned. Christopher, I have to ask the question that we all cringe about. Is it all 100% your hair, or is it any attachment?
It's 100% all mine.
Wow. So, but you know what? Under the law, it doesn't matter with the locks. Did you all know that under the law, even if it's 100% your hair, it's considered cultural identity and not race? Did you all know that? So under the law, I have this under control, I'm strutting now. The afro is always protected, okay? This is always protected because it's considered race. This is how she was born. The hair that is growing out of her scalp is the same as your facial feature or skin. This is always protected. The locks, this is not considered race. It's called cultural identity. Under the law, an employer can ban locks because under the law, this is the style that purportedly he created. It's not race because any race on earth can have locks. Did you all know that? You can have white people with locks. You can have Asian people with locks. You can have Hispanic people with locks. So the reason why an afro such as Felicia's would be protected is always protected versus Christopher's locks not being protected because this is cultural identity. The afro is considered race. Do you all see the difference? Does that make sense to everyone? Or do you all think this should also be considered race? Yes, no, just keep it in mind. Now the beard, some companies will have an anti-beard policy. If you work in food service or an industry where the beard might fall out and interfere with work, the employer can ban beards. So if your employer bans the beard, don't go and grow a beard. But if you are a black man, you might have PFB, which is a medical condition, and if you have PFB, perhaps you can't shave, right, because of razor bumps. So those issues are real, but just keep in mind, whatever your employer's dress and grooming code is, that's what you need to follow. Now, before I leave the stage, I want to briefly go back and make sure that each model provides an overview of who they are, what they do, and how you can follow them. So briefly, in one sentence, Christopher, tell us who you are and what it is that you want us to know about you.
My name is Christopher Williams. I'm currently a teacher and educator, proud educator. I'm also a singer, songwriter, and producer. Clap for educators. Proud educator at that. Singer, songwriter, and producer. You can follow me on Christopher Williams on Facebook and Instagram, Medulla on it, and also at Twitter. Also, I'm into fashion as well, so you guys can see me at the booth also.
Awesome. Next, we have Apostle Dwan.
Hey there, I'm Dwan Rollinson, and I'm a media trainer and a prophetic mentor and also an author. You can follow me online at Dwan Rollinson, or at Prophet Dwan is my social media tag.
Thank you so much. And were you going to catch me if I fall?
I was going to do something, yes.
She had my back, right? All the way back.
Hi, my name is Felicia Wright, and I am an entrepreneur. I also have a signature series called Naturally Confident, where I instill the value of self-confidence in young girls and women. We actually have an event coming up later this month, and you can follow me on Instagram, felicia.b.wright.
Thank you so much, Felicia. And isn't she adorable, guys? We have natural hair in the schools, mahogany, and I know you said 6th grade, right? Which school do you go to?
Twin Lake Academy Middle School.
Twin Lake Academy Middle School. So thank you all so much for joining us. So our models can gracefully exit, and be careful as you do.